This episode is an analysis of the track, The Waters, not quite an analysis of the entire mixtape that's on the list, don't worry. Water should be a given and should be a basic right for every human being on the planet, and yet it's not. As a 23-year-old, Mick here talks about his life living on the south side of Chicago and far beyond. Water is generally used for illustrating aspects of the subconscious, maybe talking about dreams, or otherwise talking about the imagery or haziness of calm at the same time. Initially, you could also argue that water in hip-hop talks about sexuality, alcohol, or lyrical flow. In this instance, however, Mick uses it to talk about the human condition. The first line could talk about the truth being realized. In other words, when the truth isn't so overbearing. The bank isn't taking his card because he has no money, but also no one's going to pull his card, aka attack him, because he's not that big of a target. Riverbanks also are the land on side of water and side of rivers, a potential reference to how he's in a no man's land situation. He's neither successful nor is he about to die. Stephen Hawking, the physicist, has motor neuron disease, which relegates him to a wheelchair and also is unable to talk physically. Instead, he has a speech generating device. Mick's point in mentioning Hawking is that he similarly does more and talks less. His intelligence is what lets him survive, and that's how he runs. The second line is a metaphor for saying that despite his reach, he's unable to even comprehend his rival's existence. The use of fly in the last line is a subtle reminder about Aaliyah, who was extremely successful but then died in a plane crash in 2001. It's a reminder that no matter how good you get, you're only one step away from making that pointless. Rock the Boat was one of Aaliyah's last songs she recorded a music video for before she died. It's a statement about how he's not trying to change the ideals or the perceptions of those who have come before him, but he's trying to make his own spin on things, hence the flow is crazy. Baroque art was essentially artwork which had emotion that was exaggerated, it had drama, and it was grand. Mick is saying that he paints a different picture with his rhymes. They're gritty, real, and often not pretty. But that's the point. He's trying to show the reality of his situation and the stories that he tells. There is no sugarcoating. He's got way too much on his mind because he's thinking about the injustice that plagues America, but also the injustice that preys on weak minds. Things like marketing tools, psychology, and also the way how social media has changed the game quite literally. Everyone's thinking they need to live some sort of life to appear successful. His mental state as a result is also quite weak because at the end of the day he's also human too. Got a little light about as bright as my Bic is a representation of how he's become the very embodiment of a cheap Bic lighter with its weak flame. This is one of the most important hooks ever in my eyes. Water is within us, it's most of us, and yet we look for things that aren't helpful to that. We look for gold, we look to go to the stars, we try to accumulate things that we hope will give us some meaning in some way, shape or form. Mick is trying to say that people do things with a distorted sense of reality nowadays. They forget their roots, they forget their values, they never take a moment to pause. There's less and less emphasis to take a moment to think about the neighbours and see how they're doing. The last line on saving your soul is about being simple, thinking from first principles and saying, look, what do I care about? What is it that I want? And what is actually really important to me? Start doing things with your own definition of purpose rather than going through the motions is what's key. Bottom of the map represents Huntsville, Alabama, where he was born. Huntsville is known as Rocket City due to NASA's Marshall Space Flight Center being there. The Roll Tide, as people from Alabama know, is the state university's rally cry for their sports teams. The use of the word tide is sort of taking in the aspect of renewal of energy, and in this case the renewal of his spirit when he's reminded of where he's from and what that means. Gone in 60 Seconds was a 1974 film that was remade in 2000, which starred Nicolas Cage. He's not only referring to his first mixtape, but he's also trying to say that within 60 seconds, the competition is no longer the competition, as it's clear whose ability is really great. The mixtape, The Story of Nicolas Cage, was one which had gratitude but depth. It had references to movies and past trivia, but it also had rhymes which matched what Mick was saying to us. 60 seconds of any part of his mixtape would have you believe of his abilities early on. A C note is a $100 bill, but it's also a sinkhole with a body of water at the bottom. People say face, aka avoid humiliation by being wealthy. In other words, it's a myth to think that money is the key to respect when it's only used as a facade. It's strange to think that we're at the stage in life where we're willing to almost sacrifice ourselves in the efforts to attain more perceived value. What is money? Currency. The use of the roll here refers to rolling a joint. Catching him in the cut is the idea that being honest goes two ways. He can see when people lie as well. There's a lot to be said about being perceptive and being aware of your surroundings. The truth is that people tend to lie on many platforms. How? First, people directly lie about their lives, which is often an effort to make themselves look more desirable or positive. Research suggests that we are programmed to trust others. It's ingrained in us developmentally as it's essential to our feelings of safety and security, but it causes us to have a distorted perception of what people are trying to say and what their true intentions are. One of the last points he makes in the entire track is that people who have an important message to spread, whether that's Martin Luther King or Jesus Christ, for example, are often killed. It's a statement that changes to the status quo, no matter how morally correct, are often slow to be adopted. As the last part of the line says, people want proof of what happened. They want to know the truth deep down, no matter how blatant the lies are.